Good evening and welcome to the October 26th regular meeting of the City of Arcata's Planning Commission. We are holding the meeting as a webinar in response to local efforts to reduce the spread of COVID-19 virus. If you wish to make a public comment during the meeting, there are two ways. If you are on your computer, when the commission is discussing the agenda item on which you would like to speak, click the raised hand icon. When the public comment period opens and it's your turn, you'll get a notice when the clerk unmutes you and you'll have 2 minutes to comment. If you are on the phone, you can also join the meeting and comment by calling the number and meeting ID, all of which are on the bottom of this screen. Press *9 to let the clerk know you wish to speak. When the public comment period opens and it's your turn, the clerk will unmute you and you'll hear a prompt. So you need to listen for that and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. This meeting is now officially called to order. Director Loya, can we get a roll call?
Absolutely. Commissioner Figueroa?
Present.
Commissioner Davies?
Here.
Commissioner Tagney?
Here.
Commissioner White?
Present.
Commissioner Barstow?
Here.
Vice Chair Mayor?
Here.
And Chair Said Alcock. You're muted, Chair.
Here. And at the staff's table, we have David Loya, Director of Community Development. I don't know if we have Joe Matier. Is Joe or Dilo here? No?
No, we have the Director of Environmental Services, Emily Sinkhorn, and the Deputy Director of Environmental Services, Emily Benvey.
All right, welcome. Okay, so let's move to oral communication. This time is provided for people to address the commission or submit written communications on matters not on tonight's agenda. At the conclusion of all oral or written communications, the commission may respond to statement. Any question that requires commission actions will be set by the commission for a future agenda or referred to staff. Is there any member of the public who would like to address the commission on something not on the agenda?
There are no members of the public.
No, okay. The consent calendar, the only item we have on the consent calendar tonight is our October 12th minute. Does anyone need to pull that item or can we get a motion to approve? Commissioner Mayer?
I'd like to pull that item briefly.
Okay. What are your concerns about that item?
It's something that I think applies to several versions of the minutes, and I've noticed that these minutes have quite a bit more detail about the public comments than our minutes typically have, and I think there's a protocol issue that I'd like the commission to discuss, perhaps not right now, but maybe in communications later, about the level of detail in the minutes about public comments. And I pulled it now because we're being asked to approve it as is. I'm okay with that tonight, but I think we actually need to talk about how the minutes address public comments in Planning Commission hearings and get a sense of what we want to see in terms of consistency. So I'll just close that and I'll actually make a motion to approve these minutes when you're ready for that, but would like to make sure that we discuss that protocol issue.
Commissioner Tagney?
Yeah, small clerical error on the minutes. On the public hearing items, the wrong person is noted as chair. On the roll call.
That too.
Okay, so do we want to make a motion to approve the minutes as amended, and then perhaps we can discuss this down under Commissioner Communications towards the end of the meeting. Director Loya, does that sound like a plan?
Yeah, I think amending the minutes, I'm almost certain a minute track holdover. It's part of the software that handles our staff reports. So we'll fix that with a motion to adopt as amended or approve as amended. But I think to have any kind of substantive discussion about the content of the minutes, we would need to agendize that. So I can put that on for a future agenda.
I'm wondering if we can discuss that during the communications part of this meeting, since it doesn't necessarily require any voting action. It's basically a protocol item for staff communications with the commission.
I'll leave it to the chair. My understanding of the communications portion of the meeting is that it's intended for, brief communications relayed from one party to the other. Sometimes there's a little bit of back and forth, but you're not really intended to have substantive discussion about the merits. So I'll leave it to you all if you decide to, pursue some sort of discussion about that at the communications, or I can agendize it.
Let's agendize it. Let's do that. And then, so do we have a motion to approve the minutes as amended? I think Commissioner Mayor, did you make it first?
Yeah, I'll move to approve as amended, and that for now the amendment would simply be to change the name of the chair for that meeting.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Who was that?
White.
Okay, so we have a first by Commissioner Mayor and a second by Commissioner White. All in favor? Can we get a roll call, please, David?
Commissioner Figueroa?
Aye.
Commissioner Davies?
Aye.
Commissioner Tagney?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Barstow?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mayor?
Aye.
And Chair Said Alcock?
Aye. Okay, motion passes. And then we'll agendize that, going over how we want the minutes recorded in the future for a future meeting. Okay, so we have 4 resolutions to consider this evening. The first is PC 21-03, finding that the donation of a conservation easement over a portion of AP 503-271-028 is in conformance with the general plan. Before we open this to the public hearing, do we have any commissioners who have an ex parte communication to disclose? Commissioner Davies?
I need to recuse myself from this item as it has to do with my personal property.
I think the second agenda item deals with your property, Commissioner Davies.
Oh, I thought it was the
Oh,
first.
no, I'm sorry. That's right. It does. Yeah, so what I would recommend is an agenda modification, because yours is the second item, and I would suggest taking this agenda modification as a vote to move the second item to the end, and then that way you can participate in the first 3.
Okay.
Okay, let's make sure I understand. So we're moving the second one to the fourth one. Okay.
We need a motion on that though, right?
Yeah, I'm just making notes. Okay. Okay, do we have a motion to amend the agenda?
I move that we amend the agenda.
We have a first by Tangney. Do we have a second?
I second.
Who said
right.
that?
That was Davies. Commissioner Figueroa?
Aye.
Commissioner Davies?
Aye.
Commissioner Tagney?
Aye.
Commissioner White?
Aye.
Commissioner Barstow?
Aye.
Vice Chair Mayor?
Aye.
and Chair Bassett Alcock.
Aye. Let me just make sure I understand, Commissioner or Director Loya. So the second one is going to be, okay, so we're still moving forward on the first one, the PC 21-03. Okay. All right. So we don't actually have ex parte communication, right, on this first one, Davies, because his is the next one, right, where he needs to recuse himself.
Yes, and that one was moved to the end, so he won't need to recuse until the very end, and that way he
Okay.
can.
Okay, so thank you. Can we get a staff report on PC 21-03?
Sure. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I'm Emily Sincorn, Director of the Environmental Services Department, and we have 4 different hearings for you to consider for potential conservation easements and acquisitions to support multiple benefits for the city. But here before you today for consideration of conformance with the general plan. And so for this first hearing, staff recommends that the Commission adopt Resolution PC 2103, finding the donation of a conservation easement over a portion of APN 503-271-028 in conformance with the general plan. So just for more information, the city has really been looking for opportunities through acquisitions and conservation easements to support habitat protection and really reduce development impacts directly adjacent to the community forest. So I have a couple slides just to provide some visuals. Hopefully you can see this in a second. So this is just a visual of the city's current forest land owned in fee, the Arcata Community Forest Tract, Sunnybury Tract, and the Jacoby Creek Tract. And the city has already pursued, I'm getting ahead of myself. The city has pursued conservation easements as a tool. And so I wanted to talk about what a conservation easement is. So it really is a voluntary legal agreement that permanently limits the type of development or resource use on a property and really intended to protect its conservation values. The city only works with willing landowners for this. The landowner retains the fee title to the property and then grants the conservation easement to another entity to really maintain in perpetuity and monitor that easement in perpetuity. And so these terms of the easement become part of the property deed and run with the land. And these easements can be structured in different ways. And we'll talk about those for the 2 kind of today. But the city has existing conservation easements directly adjacent to community forest land, and many that you may have are aware about or have traveled through. The Samuels Conservation Easement has public access as well. Today, for these before you, we're just considering a conservation easement and not public access. But there are several adjacent to the community forest so far, both in the Arcata Community Forest and Jacoby Creek Forest. And so again, some of the benefits of conservation easements is it's really an opportunity to maintain habitat and conservation values without additional land acquisition to the city and therefore associated costs and long-term maintenance or adding properties to our non-industrial timber management plan. It really is a tool to buffer the community forest from potential further development, parcelization, and habitat loss. And then also another benefit is visual aesthetics, being directly adjacent to public access trails in the forest. So that's just a bit about conservation easements in general with the city. And so this item before you is about one property in particular. It is owned by Lisa and Tom Bethune, and it is zoned a rural estates in the unincorporated county. And they're really looking at offering a donated conservation easement over a third of their property. And there are several other conservation easements that both the city holds, as in the previous slide I had shown, and other parcels adjacent to the forest that there's another that is owned, that is the conservation easement is held by the Jacoby Creek Land Trust. So this kind of is an area where there has been development adjacent to the community forest, and there's a benefit, even if a conservation easement is small, to retaining that buffer adjacent to the forest. And so for this parcel, I just wanted to show a couple photos from this parcel. It is redwood and spruce overstory, and definitely has habitat values, even though is about a little less than an acre. So I'm just going to stop sharing that real quick, but just wanted to give an overview of the property. Staff has really determined or really recommends that this action is consistent with existing city policies in the general plan, the open space plan, and the forest management plan. And really supporting open space and ecosystem functions continues to be a city council goal for this fiscal year. And we also deem that this action of accepting a conservation easement would be categorically exempt under the California Environmental Quality Act per class 13, which is really based is regarding acquisition of lands for wildlife conservation purposes, and class 17 really for accepting easements for maintaining open space values. So that is a bit about the property, and I would be happy to answer any questions that may assist with your findings.
Thank you. Does the commission have any questions, follow-up questions?
Yes, thank you, Emily, for that. And I'm wondering if the city has any responsibility to the property once the conservation easement is in place.
Oh, thank you for answering that question. So part of our process will be completing a baseline conditions report so that we have an idea of what development is on site, habitat characteristics, and that really will serve as a baseline and inform us for regular monitoring of the easement. I am very interested in our department establishing very clear monitoring schedules for all of our properties. And so this conservation easement would be scheduled for regular and consistent monitoring, and therefore reporting and communications with the landowner to ensure that actions on the property are consistent with the conservation easement language.
Are there any further questions? All right, I just have a couple of questions. I thought I knew what a conservation easement was exactly, but just so who maintains the property? Does the property owner have to continue to maintain it? Who has like liability, and then who like if what about like are the public, do they have access to it at all?
Yeah, great question. So conservation easements can be structured in different ways. For this conservation easement, there is not discussion of including public access. And so, the city has a conservation easement with public access and many without. And so this would be one where the landowner retains the ownership of the parcel, is responsible for the overall upkeep and maintenance of the property in conformance with the agreements that are laid out and agreed upon in the conservation easement. So for example, and we're still drafting the easement language with the Bethunes, the current landowner at this property. But it is envisioned to be similar to an existing easement that was the DeFord conservation easement, where in particular, tree removal is really only limited to hazard trees or checking in with the city for any larger tree removal above a certain DBH or a certain size tree. So that is how this easement will likely be structured. And so the city's responsibility is really just monitoring to be in concurrence with the easement agreement.
Well, if there are no other questions by the commissioner, let's open this to public comment. Excuse me, are there any members of the public who would like to comment on this item?
There are none.
None, okay. Then we will close the public portion of that. And then do we have a motion for approval? Someone like to make a motion to approve PC 21-03?
I'll move to approve it.
We have a first by Commissioner Barstow. Do we have a second?
Second it.
Second by Commissioner Figueroa. All in favor, or can we have a roll call, please?
Yeah, Commissioner Figueroa,
Aye.
Commissioner Davies,
Aye.
Commissioner Tagney,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Barstow,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mayor,
Aye.
and Chair Sadel.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, so let me just make sure I have my act together. So our second resolution tonight is PC 2105, finding that the acquisition of 9 separate parcels, too many parcels for me to list here, is in conformance with the general plan. So we're on PC 21-05. We skipped ahead. So do we have any commissioners with an ex parte communication to disclose? No. Okay. Can we get a staff report, please?
Sure. Hello again, commissioners. So this resolution before you regards the potential acquisition of open space and agricultural land in between 101 and South G Street within the city limits. And would love to have your discussion on findings for this potential acquisition being in conformance with the general plan. I'm going to share a screen again. Hopefully you can see. So again, these are 9 parcels, about all of the acreage is a little over 87 acres. It is zoned agricultural exclusive within the city limits. This has been an area that the city has really seen as an opportunity for potential future acquisition. And these parcels recently were placed on the market, and that opened an opportunity to have discussions with the landowner for potential interest into entering into negotiations with the city. The city council has approved entering into negotiations, and that is again why we're before you today. These properties, and again, this acquisition, we feel would be extremely consistent with our general plan and open space plan, and also kind of stormwater master plan. This is a parcel that has wetlands. Let's see. Yes, the parcels are really mapped as wetlands in the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service National Wetland Inventory, and they're hydrologically connected to Lower Butcher Slough. Let's see. And this parcel really could be strategic for not only ensuring our open space values, but thinking of future sea level rise and adaptation planning for potential eco levies or other strategies to really be part of the city's overall sea level rise adaptation planning, and really thinking of our properties along South G as sea levels rise. The property is currently used for grazing, and there also are outdoor advertising. And we really see in the short term, the city being able to manage this property very similarly to the properties across 101 on the east side of 101, the Jacoby Creek, Gannon Slough wildlife area that the city has 3 different leases for grazing and has done a lot of restoration projects. So really looking at the continuance of open space values, wildlife benefits from grazing for many species on the Pacific Flyway, and opportunities for restoration activities. So in the short term, we feel that that could be managed in a similar way with potential future sea level rise adaptation planning opportunities. So again, the staff feels that this acquisition would be consistent with the general plan and categorically exempt under CEQA per Class 13 around acquisition of lands for wildlife, Class 17 for acceptance of easements or fee title for open space values, and also Class 25 for transfer of ownership in the interest of land to really preserve existing natural conditions. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, again, in your deliberation of findings.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have questions? Oh, Commissioner Mayer.
Hi. Yeah. First, yay. And second, just a little bit of detail. Is this acquisition going to go before the public again with the city council at all for comments from landowners on South G and South H? And second, right now, of course, the current version of the general plan doesn't take into account the imminent imminent local coastal program amendments, and I'm wondering what will happen with the local coastal program's treatment of these properties. That I guess that's a funny way of saying yes. I think it's definitely in conformance, but it even more emphatically creates a peninsula effect with South G and South H, and so I'm wondering how the plans coming up in the near future are going to deal with that, and whether the city council is going to hear additional comments and potentially objections to the section.
Yeah, I will first just share that the potential for entering into real property negotiations for these 9 parcels did go before the City Council on July 23rd. So that was during open session for potential comment and discussion. And then any potential future acquisition, which again may be will really be contingent on determining a fair market value for the property and securing funding, which will most likely be grant funding. And so there will be opportunities when kind of those pieces are coming together. The city council would accept the acquisition or potential acquisition at a public open session as well in the future. And then for your second question, especially around the local coastal program updates, I believe Director Loya may be best fit to answer that question.
Yeah, thank you, Director Sinkhorn. The local coastal program, as you're aware, Vice Chair Mayer, is currently undergoing an update. We've looked at some of the coastal zoning ordinance over the course of last year in segments, and we're kind of making the final push on the land use element, the portion that would be embedded in the general plan, and then also the coastal zoning ordinance, which we'll be bringing back over the course of the next couple of months. And if I understood your question correctly, it's how does this acquisition comport with, or how does the that LCP draft treat this property? And in terms of the sea level rise adaptation objectives that Director Sinkhorn outlined, I think those are real consistent with the proposed draft. And at this point, the sea level rise strategy has been sort of envisioned as a measured retreat strategy that would work with the conditions on the ground at the time, and assess changes. So I don't think that there would necessarily be an immediate shift from the open space lands, grazing lands, et cetera, to all of a sudden immediately open waters. That's not the proposal. So I think it's still consistent with the planning that we've done, and I don't think the city's acquisition would trigger an immediate change to some other type of habitat. But I do think it's critical for our long-term planning effort, for adaptation. I hope I addressed your question. I'm not sure I understood it fully.
Yeah, you did. Could I add one more question to it, which is that given the fact that this acquisition would make the 9 parcels city property in fee, is there consideration of rezoning that to coastal natural resource rather than ag exclusive? And I know that goes beyond the action that we're being asked to take tonight, but I think that it's kind of an interesting and important question.
Yeah, I mean, we'd certainly have to take that up, and we haven't done any analysis. The baylands, I believe, right now are all zoned AE, and it really just depends on how we manage them. But we can certainly consider rezoning in the future.
All right, are there any further questions for staff? Commissioner Tegney?
Yeah, once the city acquires the property, is there consistency with the general plan for the city of Arcata to be the renters of outdoor advertising, particularly in wetlands?
Yeah, the outdoor advertising often comes with a time period of a lease. And so I am not recalling what the time period is for these 3. They're like 3 double billboards. But the city may be able to allow the lease to run its course and not renew. The city council could choose to renew it and have additional revenue. There would likely want to be review of, or just analysis of consistency with other parts of the general plan. Or if there was adequate funding, the city may be able to buy out the remaining years of the lease. That would really need to be determined with the city council and the intentions for the property, but there would be several options the city could take.
Thank you. And I want to also add that I think it's a thrilling purchase. It's fabulous to see the city acquire that property. And I hope it has a higher purpose in the future than cows and outdoor advertising. So thanks for your work.
Are there any further questions, or should we open this to public comment? Director Loya, is there anyone member of the public who wishes to comment?
There is no one in the audience that wishes to comment.
Oh, okay. All right. So the public comment period is now closed. If we don't have any further questions, is there someone who would like to make a motion to approve the PC 2105? Commissioner Mayor?
I move to approve resolution PC 2105.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a second? We need a second.
I'll second.
Commissioner Davies. So we have a first by Commissioner Mayer and a second by Commissioner Davies. Can we get a roll call, please?
One more time, Commissioner Figueroa,
Aye.
Commissioner Davies,
Aye.
Commissioner Tagney,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Barstow,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mayer,
Aye.
and Chair Vasade Alcock.
Aye, motion approved. All right. Okay, for our third public hearing is Resolution PC 2107, finding that the acquisition of AP number 505-251 and 011, as well as a partial public easement over 505-251-013 are in conformance with the general plan. Again, do we have any commissioners with the ex parte communication to disclose regarding this item? Okay, can we get a staff report, please?
Sure. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Emily Benvey, Deputy Director of Environmental Services. I will start with the staff recommendation and then I'll jump into specific location and context. So the staff recommendation is that the Planning Commission adopts Resolution PC 2107, finding the acquisition of APN 505-251-011 and a public access easement over a portion of 505-251-013 adjacent to the Arcata Marsh and Wildlife Sanctuary in conformance with the general plan. So to provide some context, I will share the image that was, or the map that was incorporated into the staff report. This parcel in bold is the subject parcel the city is seeking to acquire, which is 505-251-011. On the eastern border, there is an existing wetland setback. On the western border, there is an existing City of Arcata ingress-egress easement for public utilities. That easement, you'll see by looking at the hashed line, extends all the way to nearly Samoa Boulevard over the adjacent parcel 505-251-013. Both of those parcels are currently owned by Humboldt State University. And so the city's intent in acquiring the subject parcel is to allow future protection of open space, recreation, habitat, and wetland mitigation and sea level rise adaptational options. So while we don't have a specific plan for the parcel, that's the list of considerations the city is currently considering, to be redundant there. I also want to point out that the public access easement was a condition of approval from the McDaniel Slough project from years ago, but the city has not fully met the condition due to the lack of site control. And so Humboldt State University has indicated their interest to sell this subject parcel to the city, as well as include a public access easement to be added to the existing ingress-egress easement. The last thing that I will point out is the city completed or had a wetland delineation completed prior to moving forward with this parcel appraisal. And for all intents and purposes, entire parcel is covered by wetlands ranging from 1 to 3 perimeter wetlands. And so I bring that up because the appraisal has determined it's largely undevelopable, which is noteworthy considering the parcel is zoned for industrial limited uses. It really isn't feasible to develop the parcel with those uses. The acquisition is consistent with the general plan, the open space plan, as well as the stormwater master plan. And it is categorically exempt from CEQA guidelines under Class 25, which is transfer of ownership of interest in land to preserve existing natural conditions. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any follow-up questions? Okay, seeing none, are there, oh, Commissioner Tagney?
Yes, thank you, Emily. I'm wondering then, I'm not quite understanding about the coastal access opportunity that has been discussed in the past. As I've tried to hike through there, there's a locked gate right near the HSU industrial property. However, further down right at the slough, there's a gorgeous bridge, and it's counterintuitive. Like, I'm not sure if we're supposed to be in there or not supposed to be in there. And what's the prospect here in the future after Arcata purchases this property? Will it change?
Yeah, so you certainly identified the on-the-ground conditions not exactly feeling consistent with the existing easement conditions for sure. And so yes, the city is seeking to essentially open that up for public access. You know, it may be being used as de facto public access currently. So the city's hoping to formalize that. And while we don't have specific plans at this point, because that would likely require Caltrans approval as well as development of some sort of parking area. So that isn't currently the plan, but by securing access as part of this acquisition, we can set the stage for that future work.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, seeing none, are there any members of the public who have questions?
The hordes are still being held at bay.
Okay.
You're muted, Chair.
I don't remember what I
There you
said
go.
last, but do we have a motion to approve PC 2107? Commissioner Mayor?
Yeah, I'd like to move also to approve item PC 2107 and this is a long time coming. Yeah.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so we have a first by Commissioner Mayer and a second by Commissioner White. Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Figueroa,
Aye.
Commissioner Davies,
Aye.
Commissioner Tagney,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Barstow,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mayer,
Aye.
and Chair Said Elcock.
Aye, so motion is approved. All right, so now we're going to our fourth and final public hearing item, and Commissioner Davies needs to recuse himself. So you can just take the rest of the night off if you want.
Yeah, how's this going to work, David?
You're welcome to either turn off your sound and video and sit out the proceedings and then jump back on when we get to communications, or if you'd like, you can just leave the meeting. Totally up to you.
How will I, what do you recommend? I want to make sure I do the right thing.
Either one is perfectly acceptable. And
So I just need to turn off.
You'll be able to hear
Sorry, turn off my video and
audio.
Okay.
Correct.
And we'll invite you back in when we're done. Okay, so the fourth and final public hearing item this evening is PC 2104, finding that the donation of conservation easement over a portion of AP number 500-011-007 is in conformance with the general plan. Before we open this public hearing, do any commissioners have an ex parte communication besides Commissioner Davies? No, okay. All right, can we get a staff report, please?
Good evening again, commissioners. So our staff recommendation is for adopting resolution PC 2104, finding that the donation of a conservation easement for this parcel would be in conformance with the general plan. So this again would be a donation of a conservation easement adjacent to existing city-owned Arcata community forest land. And I'll just set our stage again with, again, this is a map detailing existing conservation easements the city holds and the two proposed easements that we've discussed in the two hearings today. And so this easement in question is this larger orange 80-acre parcel. And this parcel is owned by Commissioner Scott Davies, and therefore the recusal. And so again, the city is interested from hearing from willing landowners interested in working with the city to place a conservation easement on their parcel for protecting of habitat values and other values adjacent to city forest land and open space land. And so the city council has already approved entering into negotiations for a conservation easement over this parcel back in February 2020. As we see, just as this is more of a close-up, as we discussed in the first public hearing tonight, their conservation easements can be structured in different ways. And the interest from this property owner is structuring the conservation easement to allow for sustainable timber harvest, with the idea that active forest management can help shift the habitat and forest structure towards more of an uneven aged, complex forest, and heading kind of with active management, really try to assist in speeding up retaining more old growth characteristics in the forest through active timber harvest and selective single tree selective harvest. And so this would be an conservation easement agreement structured a little bit differently than in the first hearing we heard tonight, but it would likely be similar to the type of conservation easement that the city holds over the Samuels conservation easement in the north of, adjacent to, but north of the Arcata Community Forest. Also, the easement area and language details are still being worked out, and we're seeking your findings on conformance with the general plan. Again, we feel that our staff sees that this conservation easement would be consistent with the existing general plan, the forest management plan, and open space plan, and that this action would be categorically exempt under CEQA per Class 13, Class 17, and Class 17 related to acquisition of lands for wildlife conservation purposes and the acceptance of easements for retaining open space character. I am happy to answer any more questions about this particular hearing before you, and thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? I see Commissioner Mayer.
Hi. Sorry for having so many questions, but maybe this is interesting to others as well. Under the conditions of this easement, on timberland, would any future timber harvest plan for this land then come under the purview of any city committee like the Forest Management Committee? And would those plans be, subject to additional public input beyond what a typical timber harvest plan outside the city limits would be by citizens in Arcata?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if the city did not take action and acquire this conservation easement, by being an adjoining landowner, the city would be part of the referral process for input on a THB timber harvest plan, or if a future non-industrial timber management plan, or NTMP, was developed for this parcel. And so there would be the usual typical public opportunities through CAL FIRE to comment on those harvest plans, as well as the city being notified and therefore having the opportunity to consult with our forest management committee. The real benefit of a conservation easement for this property, besides conservation of habitat values and visual aesthetic values directly adjacent to the community forest, really ensuring contiguous wildlife corridors between the Arcata Community Forest and further east towards the Mad River, it really would be that the city would be able to work with the landowner to include language in the conservation easement that would really help guide the type of active forest management that both the landowner is interested in and the city would recommend for really trying to accelerate those more old growth characteristics on the current forest land. And but just to further answer your question, the city would not have an active role in laying out the a harvest unit. The landowner would work with their own forestry consultants or however they choose to do that active management on their property. The city would just be ensuring that any plans are consistent with the agreements outlined in the conservation easement.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the commission? If not, we'll open this to public comment. Are there any members of the public? No? I'm so surprised that no one's calling in. This is so important and exciting, actually. Okay, so public comment period is closed. Do we have any further questions, or would someone like to make a motion to approve? Commissioner Mayer?
I love making these motions. I move to approve resolution PC 21 07? Oh, 04. Yes. Okay. 04, which got moved. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Mayer and a second by Commissioner Barstow. Can we get a roll call, please?
Commissioner Figueroa,
Aye.
Commissioner Taggy,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Vice Chair Mayer,
Aye.
and Chair Besaid Elcock.
Aye. Motion is approved. Commissioner Davies, if you can hear me, you're welcome to come back into the meeting now. And thank you, by the way.
Yes.
So do we have any business items,
There are none.
correspondence or communications?
I don't have any for staff to commission at this point.
Okay, if there's nothing else, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Bye.